In my 35 years working as a neurologist, I have seen very few people who come to me complaining about memory problems or saying something like, "Doctor, I think I have dementia." Practically, I don't see such cases at all. Most often people say, "I have a headache, I feel dizzy, I have discomfort, my blood pressure is high," and so on. I am Professor Edward Yakupov, a neurologist with more than 30 years of experience. Today I will talk to you about the factors that contribute to the development of dementia. What should you pay attention to? And most importantly, what can you do to prevent the development of dementia? Recent studies published in 2024 in the Lancet journal indicate that 49% of dementia cases can be prevented by addressing modifiable risk factors. That is, these are the factors that can be changed, the ones we can influence. After all, what can't we influence? Our age, our gender, our place of birth, which parents we were born to. All of these are non-modifiable factors. But your vision, your blood pressure, and your place of residence are modifiable factors. And we'll start by discussing those seemingly insignificant components that many of you overlook and don't associate with the development of cognitive impairment or memory disorders. First, hearing impairment. Studies from 2022 to 2023 show that there is an undeniable link between hearing loss and the risk of developing dementia. And this is not just by a few percent, but by 1.5 times or more. This is because the brain receives less additional information from the outside world. The same situation applies to vision. We all know that we receive a huge amount of information from the outside world through our vision. But did you know that if a person has cataract surgery in time, you reduce the risk of developing dementia by 29%? That's why it's important to see an ophthalmologist in a timely manner. Next, sleep disorders. People of mature age very often sleep poorly and think that, well, that's normal. An elderly person sleeps little, wakes up early, and has trouble falling asleep. But that's not the case. Every age deserves for a person to sleep well at that age. The fact is that sleep disorders are a critical issue, and they are very important in determining whether or not a person develops cognitive impairments. You probably remember that when you wake up after a bad night or haven't slept at all, your head feels foggy in the morning, you can't think clearly, and your concentration is different. This is a direct consequence of what happens in our brain, where the glymphatic system, which is responsible for clearing our brain of unwanted waste products, doesn't function properly. There is scientific evidence that even a single night without sleep causes serious problems with the metabolism of tau protein and amyloid protein. Then these are the very proteins that later lead to Alzheimer's disease. That's why it's critically important to pay attention to your sleep. So, how can I sleep well? How can I fall asleep quickly? I have a separate video on this topic on my YouTube channel. You can watch it. Then here, continuing on this topic, I can say that we conducted very serious research across the entire country throughout the Russian Federation. This study is called Sleep Study RU. How do Russians sleep? It turned out that over 60% of Russians sleep poorly, or rather complain about sleep disturbances. Either they have trouble falling asleep or they wake up too early. There is another very important factor, the use of smartphones and gadgets before bedtime. In this situation, the production and synthesis of melatonin is disrupted, a very important hormone that opens the gates to sleep. If you look at your phone screen before bed, not only do you receive news that can make you anxious, but the light, the blue light from the screen, affects the suprachiasmatic nucleus in your brain. And that's it. Melatonin is produced poorly and you fall asleep worse.
But what should I do if, for example, I still watch the news a little before bed and now I have this tangle of negative thoughts that keep spinning and spinning?
By the way, this is a continuation of one of the sub-studies from our Sleep Study 5 project, in which we examined the psychological characteristics of people who sleep poorly. And this is a very important point. When negative thoughts come to a person at night, the effect of rumination appears. A person starts thinking about what happened during the day, begins to worry about whether they will fall asleep or not. This is that very rumination, mental chewing gum. And in this case, psychological interventions are necessary, as we call them. That is, working either with a psychologist, if it's chronic insomnia, or using special relaxation techniques such as progressive muscle relaxation by Jacobson. There are breathing practices, the so-called deep exhalation practice or prolonged exhalation. And you can start with the simplest things. Someone might ask, who is Jacobson? What is relaxation? Try relaxing the muscles of your face, relax your jaw muscles, and you'll notice that you fall asleep faster. Let's return to the topic of memory disorders and cognitive impairments. What else can have an impact, and what signs, hidden signs, affect whether a person will develop cognitive impairments? Sarcopenia, loss of muscle mass. As people age, they inevitably begin to lose a certain amount of muscle mass, and they need to make extra effort. In other words, they need to stay active. There is a study from 2025 that shows if a person is not physically active, their risk of dementia increases by 1.5 times. That's why even beyond just the gym or fitness center, these are your friends. But even a brief 10-minute session of morning exercise or simply engaging in a consistent routine of walking for 30 minutes twice every week can help you to substantially lower your overall risk of developing various types of cognitive impairments and disorders. And the next very important point, which you pay attention to but usually associate with completely different problems, is balance. You're walking and you feel unsteady. You feel yourself swaying. What do you think about? Oh, I must have some kind of problem with my head, maybe dyscirculatory encephalopathy. Oh, my blood pressure is high, I need to check everything. By the way, if you measure your blood pressure incorrectly, it will be high and you'll end up treating hypertension that you might not even have. A simple test. Try standing in a comfortable spot, somewhere you can lean on something just in case you start to fall. Stand on one leg. If you feel yourself losing balance very quickly, that's an important sign that you need to work on this. We have a separate video about vestibular rehabilitation. Please take a look. These are very simple exercises, but they will help you restore your vestibular stability. And another very important point is so-called low-grade inflammation, chronic inflammation, and insulin resistance. This is visceral fat, this is excess weight. What does visceral fat mean? A person can be quite solidly built, seemingly overweight, say 1 meter 80 tall and weighing almost 90 kilos. But if it's a mass of meat, a mass of muscle, that's one situation. But if it's a mass of fat, that's a different situation. And the most dangerous fat is visceral fat on the abdomen, the so-called internal fat. This leads to problems and to elevated cholesterol levels, low density lipoproteins, and to what I mentioned earlier, low-grade chronic inflammation. And this is a risk factor for the development of cognitive disorders. Now, I want to draw your attention to some signs that can help you or your relatives prevent dementia, and by recognizing these symptoms in time, seek medical advice. Well, one of the important phenomena is speech. The speech of a person with cognitive disorders often becomes impoverished. They start either searching for words or trying to recall them. They speak in very simple phrases. The sentences become simpler, much shorter than before. They no longer use complex or compound sentences. And this is one of the important signs that something is wrong. In general, speech is one of the most important cognitive functions. Of course, it's very important that the first symptoms are related to memory. A person walks into the kitchen and forgets something or forgets someone's name. This is not yet dementia. It could be mild cognitive impairment or a very mild form, subjective cognitive disturbances, but it's necessary to pay attention to this. Next, poor orientation in unfamiliar places. Someone might say, well, I can't drive without a GPS anyway. By the way, my recommendation as a doctor with 30 years of experience, make your brain work, put away your GPS, and try driving around your city without it. Don't zone out, as they say, staring at constant glitches in Yandex. And sometimes some of you end up driving in circles. I can't do it without a GPS. Try driving without it, without any prompts. Your brain will be engaged. But orientation in unfamiliar places is a very important point that shows your brain's flexibility. Where to go, where to turn, what to do. And also, I want to show you this abbreviation and this test right now. The test is called SAGE. This is a test you can use for self-diagnosis of cognitive disorders. Attention! You don't need a doctor or a psychologist for this. You can find it in Russian, English, or any language in the world on the internet, and you can test yourself or your relative. You get a certain result, which you can interpret yourself, and it becomes clear whether you need to see a specialist or if you can wait a bit longer. But of course, the test is only one part. Only a specialist, a neurologist, can sometimes notice the subtle nuances of cognitive disorders. So now what should I do to prevent that terrible dementia or mild cognitive impairment from developing? What should I pay attention to? The first thing is, of course, your physical activity. Move in any condition. Move, walk, do fitness, swim, or as I call it, do exercises within 2 square meters next to your bed. The first 10 minutes in the morning, get up, go to the bathroom, wash up, and do a little workout. These 10 minutes will be critically sufficient for you. But it has to be a regular 10 minutes of physical activity for your brain to function well. The next important point is social interaction. The well-known Harvard study of happiness, which lasted almost 80 years, showed that it is social connections that influence our brain. If these connections are of high quality, if they are rich, not the number of so-called acquaintances or followers, but truly close friends and family members with whom you communicate. These quality connections keep your brain clear and, by the way, also increase your lifespan. That is a very simple result from the Harvard study of happiness. Take a look online. You can find references to this study. Undoubtedly, a very important risk factor for developing dementia is a low level of education. The risk of dementia increases sixfold in people with low education. So keep learning, always learn new things, and this will help you maintain your brain's flexibility. Emotional and affective disorders increase the risk of dementia by 2.2 times. That's why depression is not just a gloomy mood. It's not just that I feel emotionally unwell. Depression is an illness. We have separate videos and lectures on this topic on our YouTube channel. Please take a look. And it's important to see a specialist who treats depression in a timely manner. Otherwise, you may suffer from both depression and cognitive disorders. They are very closely interconnected. Smoking and alcohol, these bad habits increase the risk of developing dementia by 1, 2, or even 3 times respectively. And please note that there is no safe dose of alcohol. And again, we had a separate video on this topic. Watch it carefully. So the idea that 50 grams before bed won't hurt is not true. That's not the path we should take. Physical exercise is better. And what are some simple, I'm not a big fan of the word life hacks, but simple techniques that can help you stay energetic and keep your brain flexible? As I already mentioned, social connections. Communicate with intelligent people, with smart conversationalists, go to plays, thoughtful plays, and read intelligent books. There is a very interesting study that showed that reading intelligent literature for 2 months changes the structure of the brain for the better. But we're not talking about cheap books that touch neither the mind nor the heart, but specifically intelligent literature. That's the classics. Reading aloud is also very helpful. It not only develops and enriches your speech, but it also develops your brain. You not only read to yourself, but you also hear what you are reading. This is also a very important point. Use your hands. Fine motor skills. Drawing, writing, any small action helps develop your brain. I mentioned physical activity. Let it not be highly intensive but regular, and all of this will help you keep your brain safe and sound. Take care of yourself, stay healthy,